Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to episode 2 of our sculpt study, which entails a close-up look at all of the doll head sculpts that are in my personal collection. We are going to focus on a couple more head sculpts in this one, so if you haven't yet checked out episode 1, go back there and check those out. In the previous episode, I went over 5 sculpts with you guys, and in this particular series we're going to focus on the sculpts that I have at least 2 or more of, not my single head sculpts. So that's going to be in a different series. So in my current collection, I own 2 Asha sculpts right now. I did have some more before, but during our move, a lot of my dolls got kind of left behind. They're just not part of the group. These 2 are my favorites that I had in my collection, so I'm glad that I did not end up leaving them behind or forgetting them. So the first one is Genesis Quinn, and she is originally the yellow top made-to-move Barbie doll, which was the first made-to-move doll that came out in the yoga series with the Skintone, and she's the same skin tone as what we used to call the Grace skin tone, went along with the Life in the Dream House doll series. Here she's on her original body, so I did not have to do a swap for her to be articulated, of course, and she happens to be wearing some really cool designs on her jeans that were done by my son, and he kind of just these are really cool. Let me show you what he did. This particular one here, right, they're all supposed to look like Blasian girls wearing hanbok inspired clothing, and there's a little scroll here that says "Pogi Hajima," which means in Korean don't give up, and he actually used the face mold of one of my dolls to make her face, which is supposed to look like Selma. Isn't that cool? And then there's one down here as well, and if I'm not mistaken, this one is supposed to be Billy's head sculpt. It's a tiny drawing, so you can't see the details as good here on camera, but you can see it with your eyes. And I do have some merch available on our merch shop with these graphics on it, and this one says 걱정하지마, which means don't worry. You can get them on t-shirts for yourselves in our merch shop, so go ahead and check that out. The other Asha doll over here, who I named Naila, and she is our Egyptian Muslim girl. And shout out to all the Muslim viewers that are supporting our channel. I know it's Ramadan for you guys, and it's a struggle getting through the Ramadan fast properly. So those of you who are doing so, I really hope that it's made easy for you guys and that you gain a lot from your fast this month. And we're rooting for you guys, and I hope you guys will make duas for us as well, that our family will be protected, prosperous, and healthy. I appreciate you guys for continuing to support our channel. Because she's a Muslim girl who's practicing, she never takes her hijab off in public, so that's why you guys have not seen her dressed in such a way that you can see her hair and body parts. And I have a couple other dolls in my collection that are also supposed to be Muslim girls from different parts of the world, but they're not hijabi, so they don't cover up like they're supposed to. She's a really good example for me to have for my daughter who is interested in covering her hair when she's older. That's why I keep her this way. I had some other Asha sculpts, but I just considered these 2 part of my main collection, and they're definitely tier A groups of my collection. Okay, numero 2, we're going to look at these 2, which are the open mouth Millie head sculpt. So Millie is our most current modern default Barbie face sculpt that is used by Mattel whenever, you know, they have the regular Barbie character depicted on the shelves, and we have a closed mouth and an open mouth version of those dolls. So these 2 are the open mouth versions. Now they look slightly different from each other because this one, who is our Mona Roberts character, the cousin of Barbie, she is the playline version of this doll. So her face is a little bit bigger and all her features are more exaggerated. And then we have this version here who we named Barbie. This is my only character that I actually use as Barbie. And she is the Barbie look version, which is a collector level doll. And those dolls tend to have smaller heads and more, you know, precise sculpt details than the playline dolls do. And as you can see, obviously, Mona has a more customized face. This is not her original face up. I added tons of freckles to her head and her body, and she is articulated. She does not have made to move articulation. She's got a different colored lip. I did not close her mouth. At the time when I got this doll, I didn't know how to close the doll's mouths up yet. And then after I learned how to do it, I didn't want to close her mouth because, I don't know, I just didn't feel like doing it with her. I think I changed the color of her eyes because they used to be blue. So she's just got a couple of tweaks done to her face. She's not a complete repaint. I needed her to look different from the actual Barbie dolls so that I could differentiate that she was supposed to be Barbie's cousin. So they just look similar to each other, but not exactly the same. And then for Barbie over here, I didn't do any tweaks to her. She's exactly the way that she came when I got her, except that her body is not her original body. She's on a Model Muse type stiff body that has no articulation because I used her body for a different doll. And because she's just the Barbie character that we don't do a whole lot with on screen on our channel, as far as like the skits, so I didn't really feel like I needed to give her a dedicated articulated body. One of these days when we do a skit and we need this character for something, then I'll pop her head onto something that's articulated. It's really not necessary for just having her stashed away because she's definitely in like a C tier of my collection. Both of them are, so I don't really sweat her not being on articulated body like that. This is probably my favorite version of the open mouth Millie sculpt, which is why I kept this one, and it's the only one that I have other than Mona. And I like that she has long hair and her hair's very like bone straight, and she's got bangs which cover up her humongous forehead. So I don't know, I think she's like tolerable, but I don't really think she's particularly pretty. That's just my opinion. But let me show you guys another sculpt that I thought was kind of interesting and that people have like a hard time telling them apart. So now we are looking at the Mackie head sculpt. Mackie is named after Bob Mackie, the designer of these sculpts and these dolls when they first dropped, of course. The one that's on the right hand side is the Serenade in Satin doll wearing her original dress, but she's not on her original body. Her original body is like that old school 90s Barbie body. The stiff ones with the click knees, which are so played out. So I had to take her off of there because she just looked so uncomfortable. Renamed her Ren. Well, she's still in her original condition as far as like her clothing, her jewelry, her hairstyle. I didn't really change anything about her because she was really just a display doll. The doll was a gift from my daughter's teacher. I have no clue how she knew that we collect Barbies over here, but I don't know, maybe it was just a coincidence, but she happened to give that to my kids with a huge bundle of gifts for the holidays. So that's how we ended up with this doll. I think she is actually on the Barbie Look doll's body. This one is Santina. She is originally a Barbie Look doll as well, from like the older waves of Barbie Look dolls before they gave them articulated bodies. So she's got a made to move body instead. These guys are all default Barbie doll complexions. Now the thing about this sculpt, so Santina is my only Mackie that I chose to add to my collection. She's my favorite one between the two of them, I mean, and you can see that the face up on this one looks a lot more like the 90s dolls did. If you guys are familiar with the 90s dolls, they were just very like, they had bright makeup on their faces. They had big eyes. They were a little bit more cartoonish looking, the way that they drew the faces on the dolls. This has the exact same sculpt, but her face is more realistic looking as far as the features are concerned. The way they did the makeup on her face, it just looks a little bit more like a real person's face would look after putting on makeup. I do like the Mackie sculpt much better than the Millie sculpt. I think Mackie is like a prettier version of Millie and just more sophisticated looking. So I like them a lot better. I want to see if I can find more Mackies that have darker hair instead of blonde, because I feel like I need a little more variety as far as these default blonde haired Barbie dolls. They just seem like, I don't know, kind of redundant always having them with blonde hair. Yeah, so Santina has curly hair, as you can see, and I need to brush her hair out because it is rough looking, but she's really pretty, I think. and just very sophisticated is a word that keeps popping into my head every time I look at her. So I do really like this doll a lot, and I hope that those of you who are not that familiar with our channel, there's like a weird misconception that we don't like Caucasian dolls or we don't like blonde dolls because we're always talking junk about Barbie. But that's not true. Barbie is the only one that we don't like because she's so hackneyed. Every single wave of dolls always has a Barbie in it, and it's like, oh my gosh, we get it already, you know? We understand that Barbie is the main character, but sheesh, can we get some lines where there's more variety than that? Goodness gracious. And I feel like the doll lines that existed that didn't contain a default Barbie sculpt along with it, like for example, Sew and Style dolls, the Star dolls, you know, they didn't do bad. Those lines were actually very popular. So I don't understand why the need to constantly add more and more and more and more of Millies to every line. It's so annoying, but they just keep doing it. So that's what we don't like about the Barbie dolls, but not just because she's white. That's not why we don't like her. One of my favorite sculpts, this is the Karl Head sculpt, and Karl is named after a fashion designer who they did the first ever Karl doll to look like him. That's how she got her name. So first I had Darla here, and Darla was originally the Sweet Tea Barbie look doll. They're all Barbie look dolls, these three. And this one was the first one that came out with articulated body. So it was a big deal when she came out. I think the second one that I got, I want to say it was this one, which is the Pool Chic doll, and I named her Jackson after my daughter. I actually have two of her, but something happened to my first one. I didn't have time to fix the damage that was done to her, so Adonis just bought me a second one. So I was like, okay, thanks. But I don't even know what happened to the first one, you guys. I think she might have got left behind. This last one, who I named Cupcake, she's the city chic style version of this doll. All three of these dolls came with articulated bodies. Although Darla did not have a made-to-move body when she was first dropped. She had like the kind of body that Ren back there has. She had that kind of body, but these two here, the next waves of these dolls, came with semi made to move bodies. So their upper body is just a regular articulation, but their lower bodies, their legs, they have those made to move knee joints, which helps them to bend a lot further back. Don't have the joints in their ankles, so they don't have, you know, flimsy ankles. They're high heel feet. They're kind of like a hybrid. Darla here, she ended up getting a transplant onto a made to move body, so she has way more articulation than these other two, but nonetheless, I do like the way that the bodies look. They're very pretty to look at, and they look good in whatever you put them in, pretty much. These are my three Karl sculpts. For some reason, I thought that I had more Karl sculpts than this, but I really don't. So these are the three that I ended up seeing in my inventory when I got done sorting my dolls, you guys. And one of the things I love about each of them is that they have different hair types. So this one, she's got an ashy blonde kind of a color, and it's very wavy, the texture. I love this hair texture. I wish we had more dolls with wavy hair, because that's like one of my favorite hair textures for girls. Jackson with straight long hair, and it's dark brown, and she's got a side part and a little bit of curls at the end of her hair. Darla has bangs, and her hair is kind of like some big loose curls, but I love the color of her hair. So they all have very different features, but their head sculpt itself is just really pretty, very feminine looking. This is one of my favorite sculpts. So this is the same sculpt they used for the Tokidoki dolls, the Hello Kitty dolls, I think, some other very high-end luxurious collector dolls that people had a hard time getting their hands on. Okay, so our last sculpt that we're going to be studying in this video is Leah. Leah is a very popular sculpt. She is usually the one that we saw in modern times used for the Asian face sculpts. Two that I happen to have, I actually had more than this. Kitty dress fashionista doll, which was like super poppin'. The tall deluxe fashionista doll that came with several outfits, and she had the shaved sides of her head. Oh, and of course purple top, because that made to move doll was used constantly as body donors. The two that survived my collection are these guys. The one on the left is Ruby, and she is the Ruby Red Fashionistas doll that had came out with, she has bangs and long hair, and she had like a dress on when I got her. And I actually put her onto one of the Barbie Look dolls' bodies. I think the body that she has is actually Darla's original body. And it's very slender and like long. Her legs are very long. And she actually looks kind of like she's tall because of the way that her sculpt, the body sculpt is. But I thought it would be a suitable body for her just because I was thinking of like the typical Asian, like Japanese, Korean, and Chinese girls who are like really skinny and like very slender. Although they're not particularly tall, but it was the closest thing I could get at the time. I did a little bit of a touch up to her face where I think I slightly adjusted her eye makeup and her lips, the shape of her lips. I redrew them. And Ruby is a character that I think we use as a Korean girl in one of the shows that we were working on. And then we have Min here, who's one of my favorite characters from Broken Barbie show. And she's on a Made to Move body. And originally she is a Barbie Look doll as well. And this one, the Barbie Look dolls, you know, they have a little bit more glamorous makeup going on. So she has a bit more of a face up than the other doll, and they look so different. Even though they're the same sculpt, to me they just look very different. There's no way I'm gonna mix these two dolls up. Yeah, so this sculpt is very interesting because it's a really widely used sculpt for Asian face types. However, I have seen versions of this sculpt not used for dolls that are supposed to look like Asian girls. Sometimes they use them for dolls that look like other ethnicities. And of course, if you are a repaint artist, you can definitely strip the makeup off and turn her into whatever race you want her to look like, depending on the skin tone. But they do tend to make the very pale skin tone for this one, so that's why I say that she ends up looking a lot more like an Asian girl. But whatever the case is, we love Asian faces anyway, so I'm not complaining about it. I'm just explaining, guys. So we went over the Leah sculpt today, and then we took a look at Mackie, the open mouth Millie sculpt. We also checked out Asha, which, did I mention that Asha was actually one of the older sculpts? So I know some of you guys are new to collecting, and you may see the Asha sculpt in our modern day dolls like these two often. And these guys are actually very old head sculpts, like the Mackie sculpts that were out back in like the 90s and stuff. So they just revived some of these older sculpts for us. And we have Karl here at the end, who is spectacular, one of my faves. I hope you guys enjoyed looking at these sculpts. Let me know what you think about them. Tell me which ones you like the best in the comments and why. And tell me which one of these do you have in your collection. Which of these do you plan to get in the future? This sculpt study session is really interesting because I'm able to inventory all of my dolls doing it like this, and I wrote all of the dolls down that I have. I have a clear notation in front of me that I can look at, so I can decide which sculpts that I need to get more of, which I need to get less of, because I have too many of them. It's a really cool way of inventorying your collection and trying to organize your collection. So if you're nerdy like me, I totally suggest you guys try doing this at home. It's gonna be a lot easier if you have less dolls than I have. Totally worth it in the end, and it'll give you something to do if you're still in quarantine and you don't really have the same access to activities like you used to before all of this happened. I gotta get out of here, and I'll catch you in the next one. My name is Gypsy. You're watching Broken Dolly TV. I hope you subscribe, follow us on social media, and we'll see you next time. Have a dolly day.